Before us is an ordinary guy who is attacked by ophthalmologists and deprived of his mother forever. He will have to go through difficult trials to avenge his mother and bring his sister back to consciousness. And in an instant, he manages to awaken his magical powers, which will help him in the future. The manhwa immediately begins with an introduction to the main character. We watch as a guy named Yanan chooses a cake with the inscription, "Happy Birthday." Having bought a cake with the right inscription, a guy in a cool raincoat looking at the cake thinks that Jia noticed this cake last month. The main goal of our main character was the goal of a real Sigma, namely to earn more money so that his mother and sister could live their lives with dignity. After some time, the course of events moves to the place where Yanan lives. Approaching the front door, the guy notifies his mother of his arrival. Our main character's father went out to buy bread when he and his sister were still little. Meanwhile, the dude's mother opens the door and says that his sister will come later. Entering the house, holding a newly purchased cake in his hands, the guy is surprised at how many delicious things she has prepared. The next shot, we meet the sister of our main character. Her name is Jia. She thinks that she again did not find a job because of her age. Opening the door a little, she sees that it is pitch dark inside the apartment. Using critical thinking, she assumes that there is no one at home. However, the assumption was wrong. It is refuted by the firecracker who meets little sister Jia. Her brother and mother congratulate her on her 18th birthday. Jia, seeing the decorated house around her and her dressed-up mother and brother, is very embarrassed and surprised. This family lived a happy life without a father. Meanwhile, our main character was doing a very important thing. He was preparing the cake for the ceremony by setting up candles. After the guy finished doing the incredibly difficult work, he turned to his sister and told her that she could start making a wish. Having gathered together in front of the cake on which the candles were already burning, my sister wished to live her whole life next to her mother and brother, and also to quickly find a job. Next, Yanan asked his sister what wish she had made, but her mother stopped her daughter, saying that if she told her, it would not come true. After a touching ceremony celebrating his little sister's birthday, the guy reached for the switch to turn on the light. However, he stopped because a kind of spider sense had triggered, and immediately sensing something was wrong, he pulled his hand away from the switch. Until this fateful day, Yanan thought that he would be able to protect his mother and sister because he was the only man in the family. While the mother and sister of our main character were happily eating the cake, Yanan watched in horror some people in dark robes. Next, the atmospheric birthday celebration is interrupted by the loud sound of glass breaking. One of the people in a robe breaks through the window with his bare fist. After the window ceases to be an obstacle for these two, they epically break into the living room. They must have rehearsed this moment. Meanwhile, little sister Jia and her mother are also completely horrified because they understand that the disciples of Faiming, that is, the flying dark god, have discovered them. Next, the two begin to use their magic. The muscular guy in the red mask has his hands on fire, and the second one turns into a terrifying blade. Next, the guy, with the help of a super fast jerk, takes off and targets the mother of our main character with the obvious goal of taking her life. Meanwhile, the woman who is being rushed by the dark occultist asks the two how they found them, but the two are in no hurry to answer. A moment later, the muscular bastard summons a fireball and briefly tells our protagonist's mother that she doesn't need to know this. The woman immediately tells her son to get Jia out of the house as quickly as possible so that she does not get hurt. The mother of our main character was not an ordinary person. She also possessed magic, which most likely had something to do with the magic ring on her finger. She shouts at Yanan to take his sister away as quickly as possible, and what happens next is unimportant. But the guy is against it. He says that she needs to leave with her little sister. Next, the woman confidently takes a position in front of Yananya and his sisters, and then she begins to create some kind of energy with her ring. Suddenly, these two occultists shudder, because they understand that this light is familiar to them, because this is one of their techniques. The next moment, the guy in the red mask is trying to do everything to prevent this woman from escaping. He attacks her. But the dude doesn't have time, because the woman at that moment had already finished calling the spell. She had already directed it at her children. We cast a spell that Yanyana's mother began to do. There was a technique that allows them to escape, after which the brother and sister fly into the air, moving away from the battlefield. They do not understand anything. The brother and sister can only watch as these two people in robes, left alone on the battlefield with their mother, make a simultaneous attack. The woman understands that most likely right now she has lost all her chances of survival, which is why she turns to her son and asks him to take care of her sister. The next moment, the woman who was our main character's mother is attacked by an occultist with blade arms and is mortally wounded. The course of events is interrupted and we move to the evening of the next day, being at a car dump. The sister, who was wrapped in some rags, asks her brother what they are doing here. After yesterday's events, the girl could not remember some things. Due to the fact that the girl lost her memories of what happened, she asked her brother why they did not return home and remained in the landfill. But Yan Yan is not lost, and with a smile on his face he answers his little sister that in a few days they will definitely return home. He promises this. The timeline changes a little again, moving to the events of the same day but already late at night. Brother tells Jia Jia to take care of herself while he's gone. Coming out of the car dump where he stayed with his sister, Yan Yan realizes that after the shock she experienced, his sister does not remember yesterday's events at all. Next, the guy decides to return home. Because these occultists have probably already left their house, our main character's goal was a clue. Approaching his former home, the main character notices that his house has been cordoned off. Most likely, someone has already reported what happened to the police. In the next frame, we watch how the guy, feeling like an assassin, begins to perform elements of parkour, thereby entering the house through the window. Returning to the apartment and looking around, the guy looks at the cake that is lying on the floor. He thinks that his sister didn't even have time to take a bite of it, and she was waiting for him so much. Continuing his search for clues at the crime scene, our main character comes to inspect one of the corners of the rooms in which he discovers some strange syringe. The course of events is interrupted, and we again move to a car dump where our main character's sister is now, all alone. Suddenly, some incomprehensibly scary sounds are heard from a green car. The curious Jia Jia decides to go up to this car and figure out what's going on. Next, a small gray kitten with some strange symbol on its forehead in the form of a crescent comes out of the tire of an abandoned car. When our main character's sister sees this charming kitten, she is immediately touched by her cuteness. However, despite the good find, two people from the cult have already come for the girl. They tell her that she needed to be more careful because they came for her. Next, a crowd of occultists who have come to the soul of the Jia Jia sisters immediately release a whole barrage of various magical attacks in her direction. The girl is horrified and completely confused because she did not at all expect a sudden attack from behind from three magicians at once. Jaja asks these people who they are, and the last thing she manages to do before receiving a barrage of attacks is to turn away with the cat in her arms. However, this time her brother Yan Yan manages to arrive on time, and rushing into the scene, he manages to save his little sister. His sister, already on her knees, tries to justify herself to her brother by saying that these scoundrels jumped out too suddenly and were going to kill her. One of the occultists with long, luxurious hair that takes 15 steps to groom in the morning turns around and tells the guy not to interfere in other people's affairs. However, the guy has already turned on the berserk mode, filling himself with magic. The guy briefly informs this cute bastard that this is not a stranger to him. Next, the guy with long hair decides that since another person has appeared on their way, they intend to throw a party, because if the guy wants to die, then he will help him. Suddenly, the body of our main character became somehow strange, as if some force was trying to escape from the depths. Then the guy made a dash towards the scoundrels. While in the process of closing the distance, the guy said that revenge for his mother is not someone else's business. The guy with long hair was confident in his abilities. Having reduced the distance to the required distance, the guy, using his powers, tore the door off the old car and was ready to throw it at these idiots. But this psycho with the ability to control roots began to laugh, saying that our main character is an insignificant insect who should die right now. However, despite the fact that this guy tried to protect himself with his roots from the door flying at him, it easily cut through the barrier. Suddenly looking at his fingers, this scumbag realizes that he has just lost them. At first, he is in painful shock and does not immediately realize the loss. However, after some time, a terrifying delayed pain reaches this guy's brain, and pointing his head towards the sky, he begins to scream in pain. While the guy's sister is surprised by the development of this fight, the cat, who has been resting in Jia Jia's hands all this time, is carefully watching what is happening. Having lost two of her fingers, Rapunzel begins to be very indignant, because he was just wounded by a young man who had recently awakened his abilities. Hearing the long-haired guy, puzzled, begins to examine his hand from which strange blue lightning bolts are emanating. He asks him what he means. Looking at his two hands, the guy begins to understand that the feeling that overwhelms him with power is the magic that idiot is talking about. Meanwhile, this occultist begins to be even angrier. He calls our main character a bastard and calls for regenerating his lost two fingers. After he has finished restoring his fingers, the guy with gray hair looks at our main character and tells him that he has finished the game. Meanwhile, we begin to observe a black luxury car almost like Batman's Batmobile. The people inside are discussing identifying the location of the power fluctuations. Two men from a corporation who are dressed for business use technology to determine that the power fluctuation occurred at a car dump to which you need to drive 200 meters. Meanwhile, we are watching a guy behind who says that the vibration was very strong. He concludes that there is more than one person there. After this little episode, we return back to the same car dump where the battle between our main character and the occultist was going on right now. A guy with the magic of tree hands uses his hands like a whip and tries to make a slashing blow to our main character. After this dude points his hands towards Yanani, he tells him that if he managed to grab someone, then he should under no circumstances let him go. The attack that was supposed to tie up our main character completely coped with its task. The guy understands that he can escape if he concentrates. Trying to break the roots with physical force, the guy realizes that most likely he knows how to control things from a distance. He realized that he should try something. Having slightly loosened the strong grip of the roots, the guy frees his hand, and after that he aims at some object to use his powers. Having freed himself, the guy tries with all his might to repeat his first move. He tries to pick up another piece to throw it at his opponent. However, Sigma was cunning. Instead of throwing a part at the enemy, he uniquely repeated his opponent's technique by shackling his movements with a car part. After the guy with red hair saw that his friend was fixed with some kind of thing, he turns to him and asks if he needs help. This kid turns out to be not so weak. He tears a piece of metal on himself and replies that he is just playing with this guy, so don't ask nonsense. Next, this occultist takes on a terrifying form, summoning huge roots behind him, and turning to Yanan, the pot-bellied little thing says that his time has come. After this phrase, this psychopath makes a hammer of simply colossal size from his wooden hand, and before the blow he shares his intention to chop the guy into juicy mincemeat. Next, this long-haired bastard carries out his most powerful attack with a hammer directly on our main character. At this time his eyes glow like a predator. Meanwhile, Yanan realizes that a huge hammer is rushing towards him only at the very last moment, just like a student with a session. In an instant, the blow reaches our main character, and he in turn receives colossal damage. This blow will definitely create problems. At this moment, my sister's eyes well up with tears, because she is watching the brutal beating of her only brother. Even the cat is sad at this moment. The crippled guy raises his hand towards Gia's little sister and tries to tell her something, but it is difficult for him due to the injuries he just received. The guy tries to surround his little sister with different parts of metal. He tells her to run away from here as soon as possible. However, the guy with short red hair is categorically against letting them escape, and then he uses his magic to prevent them from escaping. After the spell reaches its target, the girl with pink hair is bound by some kind of stone appendages. She asks her brother to save her. Meanwhile, due to the requests of his only sister, the guy, despite the enormous pain, rises to his feet and lifts a whole heap of metal. Next, the guy who entered berserk mode with sparks from his eyes screams with all his might for the scoundrels to immediately move away from his little sister. Despite the dramatic moment, the long-haired guy interrupts Yanan and prepares to hit him with a second powerful blow with his hammer. However, this time our main character, being in berserk mode, turns out to be much faster than this guy, which is why he manages to take a pose to strike. Next, our main character decides that the best defense is attack and delivers a crushing counterattack with his fist to the face of this bastard. The blow was so strong that he sent an occultist experienced in magic to hug the asphalt, thereby working as a cleaner. Meanwhile, the girl from the long-haired man's room is shocked because this small fry has gone completely crazy, because using pure force is like pulling his bones out. The guy with red hair also added that because of this incident, especially in illegal territory, he created a vibration that would definitely attract those guys. After our main character used pure magic, these cowards were already ready to run away. The girl said time was running out, and they should move on to the main task. Then the guy we recently saw in the back seat of a luxury Batmobile suddenly appears in this traffic, smiling. He asks if they told him. After this bunch of cowards saw two guys from a third-level corporation, they decided that they were not going to risk their lives. Instead, they all decided to run away. However, the guy from the corporation did not intend to let these guys go. Then with one short command to grab, he instructed his friend to grab the fleeing ones. Next, we watch the second member of the Zhao family corporation, named Xiao Ming. With wings on his back, he tells the scoundrels to stop in their places. The girl from this gang of cowards, in the hope of getting rid of this guy, makes a fire attack which, according to her calculations, will quickly deal with this guy. However, a guy who is at a completely different level of strength manages to raise his wing in order to shield himself from the fireball flying at him. After the girl sees a huge blast wave from her attack, she grins and thinks that her attack managed to eliminate her, after which she, like in the movies, leaves against the backdrop of the explosion. Immediately after this, the two try to escape together. Having reached the fence, they freely jump over it without any difficulty. The guy who had recently been hit by a huge fireball at that moment spread his wings, noticing that these two were running very fast. Meanwhile, our main character, continuing to be in a berserk state, continues to mindlessly strike blow after blow at the guy with long hair. And this guy, in turn, has only one option left to continue receiving violent blow after blow, because the guy was very difficult to stop. Then our main character knocks his sister's offender to the floor and swings his arms to deliver a powerful blow to this scoundrel. Meanwhile, people from the corporation are watching this beating all this time. They are discussing that the combat effectiveness of a newcomer, according to legend, at the moment of madness can go off scale. Even our main character's sister, watching this atrocity, began to panic. She tried to calm him down by calling his name. However, he could not be stopped. He clearly did not intend to stop his series of blows on this bastard for a minute, and the guy below had no chance of saving himself. As I said, the main character had no intention of stopping his barrage of blows. He continued to hit him from different angles so that he would definitely not regret anything later. This poor fellow, who had been abandoned by his friends, was already crying in pain because he had been beaten for a long time, and he was forced to receive blows. This guy with long hair lay there and realized that this guy had completely lost his mind. He understood that he didn't want to die with him at all. Next, he used his hands and roots to grab onto the nearest column so that he would have at least some scanty chance of escape. While our main character was trying to catch his breath from such a long series of blows, this bastard grabbed a pillar and tried to at least somehow distance himself from the madman. Meanwhile, a guy from the corporation approaching Yanan from behind caused an electric charge and apologized in advance for his blow, because he had to do it to save his life. Next, this luxuriously dressed guy fired ball lightning right into the back of our main character, who continued to be furious. However, even exhausted and beaten earlier, Yanan managed to somehow dodge the magical projectile flying at him right behind him. This guy from the corporation was indignantly surprised that the guy dodged. He wondered how a newcomer who had lost control was able to maintain consciousness. The next step of our protagonist was to attack a member of the corporation and tell him to immediately leave his sister. The guy in turn grinned and said that he had no idea who his sister was. He assumed that the guy had completely lost control, but that was even better. Next, this member of the corporation, in response to the blow of our protagonist, took a strange pose in order to try something new. Next, the corporate dude blocked our protagonist's blow with his palm. Surprisingly, it worked quite well. After the powerful blow was easily blocked, the guy from the corporation flew into the air to avoid the next blow. After landing, he began to analyze the fight. He understood that because of the guy's desperation, it would not be possible to act tough with him, which is why he further thought about the fight. Next, this guy took out some kind of weapon and told the guy not to be offended by the fact that he would not play by the rules, because he was simply unlucky to run into his weapon. After this phrase, he attacked the guy clearly at the target. He would aim at his heart if they were enemies, but for now only the shoulder blade of our protagonist will suffer. However, our main character never ceased to amaze the corporation member. Despite the direct hit, the guy, as if nothing had happened, grabbed the weapon with his bare hands. After that, the guy took the stick in his hands even more firmly, and using incredible physical strength, easily knocked over this man like a pillow. After flying with the airline Yanan Sales, a guy from the corporation landed straight on his face on the asphalt. Coming to his senses after the flight, the guy says that he hasn't been beaten like this for a long time. He regrets that before that he was not aiming at the guy's heart. The guy continued to make jerks. This time, he takes the weapon of the dude from the corporation and, swinging, is going to attack the owner of the weapon with his own weapon. However, the guy from the corporation deftly dodges this blow by doing a somersault to an incomprehensible height, with metal objects flying around. After spending time in flight, the dude from the corporation lands on his own weapon, thereby preventing the opportunity to attack. Having created a convenient moment for an attack, this dude immediately takes advantage of it by making a jump and accumulating lightning energy in order to teach Yanan a lesson. This time it is not possible for our main character to dodge. He comes under a barrage of attacks. Judging by Yanan's loss of balance, we understand that this blow caused him enough damage to stop the fight. After the man from the corporation finally neutralizes the newbie guy, he is dissatisfied with the fact that he spent too much energy, and he was also hampered by an injury received at work. Meanwhile, a guy with long black hair who had just finished the fight turned to his partner so that he too could quickly finish collecting evidence. The guy, meanwhile, is scratching his head and doesn't understand why the management was shaking so much over this incident of hesitation. Meanwhile, the rebel Ya Nan appears behind the guy. However, this time the corporation member was ready to attack, imagining that our main character gave a soccer ball to his partner so that he would take care of it. His partner immediately realized the attack. He stopped Yanan in flight and wrapped him in feathers from his wings in order to immobilize him. The guy was shocked that this dude was interfering with them again, because it was impossible to stay on rage for so long he couldn't turn into a zombie. The guy with electricity magic explained to his partner that a gifted one in rage mode is like a zombie. He asked the guy if he could handle it, because he had no strength left to fight. Meanwhile, a dart syringe with incomprehensible contents flies at our main character, but he in rage mode does not understand this. These two were already tired of fighting this guy. They wondered if this man was a cockroach because nothing could defeat him. Meanwhile, after all this time, my little sister finally managed to use a knife to cut the roots that chained her to the ground. She is happy about it. Then the girl ran with a knife ready to these two guys from the corporation and told them to immediately leave his brother behind. The guy stopped the girl with a gesture and asked the young lady to introduce herself and tell her story. He added that her brother would definitely listen. The girl warned these two guys not to approach her because she had a knife in her hands for self-defense. However, after the battle with her brother, these guys were no longer afraid of the knife because the knife is much clearer than her brother, who is unkillable. Then the course of events moves forward a little. Apparently they found a common language because the girl and her brother were already in the car. She found out that these people were from the Department of Gifted Affairs. The girl asked if there were many such people, why she had not met them. The guy replied that the reason was their good work. There were very few gifted ones, and even fewer awakened ones. Next, little sister Gia asked the uncle to go to the hospital to stop the bleeding. The guy was insulted and said that he was not old enough to call him uncle. Meanwhile, the guy driving explained that her brother was bleeding from 7 holes. This happened because he, being gifted, used his powers for a long time. Meanwhile, the girl was sad because her brother was unconscious, and she couldn't even help him. She could only take these people's word for it. However, the guy in front told Gia not to worry, because the Zhao family corporation is professionals, and they will patch up her brother in no time. Meanwhile, we move to the Zhao family corporation. Outside the door, we hear the perplexed screams of a guy with long black hair. The reason for the guy's bewilderment was that the doctor told him that Yanan had lost too much energy and he could not be saved. He would die. Meanwhile, we move to the guy's sister, who is talking to the cat at this time, telling her that she always seems to have forgotten something. She also doesn't understand why her brother doesn't want them to return home, and now he's completely wounded. She didn't know what to do next. Next, we watch as the same guy who promised that her brother would be patched up comes through the door. The guy had a very gloomy face. Sister Gia, jumping up from her seat, excitedly asked this guy if her brother, whom they promised to patch up, had finally woken up. The guy did not lie to the girl. He immediately told her that, unfortunately, her brother's condition left much to be desired. The girl immediately jumped up to this guy and started asking what he meant. Because he said that they were professionals in this matter, she asked where her brother was. Suddenly, the guy says that this is not the problem. The point is that he is already dead. And because he is gifted, they cannot allow his body to be discovered by someone. Having heard this terrifying information, the girl's face changes horribly. She asks this guy with hope if he is joking. The guy says that he wouldn't joke about something like that. Then a moment later, the girl with pink hair, unable to cope with the news, faints. While the guy from the corporation manages to catch the girl before meeting the floor, the kitten who was sitting on the table jumps onto the floor and then runs to the ventilation. After this mysterious kitten with a crescent moon on his forehead reaches an open ventilation, he escapes safely. After some time, we are again transported to the hospital of the Zhao Family Corporation. The time is already approaching night. Next, we are transported to a room in which Sister Gia is lying on the bed. A guy with long hair asks the doctor why she has not yet come to her senses. The doctor, in turn, having read the case about this girl, tells the guy that according to their research, they discovered special genes in her. The doctor continues to say that besides the human and gifted genes, there is something unknown in her body. They have never seen anything like it before. At this time, the dude looks at the unconscious girl lying and wonders if the attack of those 3 losers at the landfill is connected with this. The corporation member, rummaging through his phone, continued to think. It turned out that her brother had ordinary genes, her sister had special ones, or the doctor did not check the genes of the corpse. Meanwhile, this guy makes a call to those who are working on his brother's body. The guy leaning against a black car answers the call. The guy with Tyler Durden's hair tells the caller that Yanan has already lost his spirit and body. He adds that they are just about to start the next procedure. Meanwhile, the phone call ends and the group responsible for Yanan's body continues to carry out the procedure. However, Tyler Durden turns out to be some kind of shady guy. He tells the guy in the cap that he has inspected the goods. Then he asks how much he will pay. The guy says that everything is the same, 1 for the dead, 5 for the living. In addition, he offers Tyler Durden to take the blue one as a gift. The guy is very happy to receive the blue capsule. He looks at it with the joy of a baby. Meanwhile, some shady guy closes the truck and is about to leave. A guy smoking his cigarette named Lee Jai is happy that he finally received a blue capsule, but it would be better if he could master the technique of creating it. Next, we watch some mysterious girl with green hair who, while on a tree branch, inspects the base through binoculars. Having discovered the base, she realizes that in front of her is the same base of gifted people. This girl's name is Feng Ling, and she will not follow anyone's orders. Suddenly, the girl, having studied the perimeter in more detail, realizes that this place is carefully guarded by security guards and a surveillance camera. This girl is not satisfied with so many security measures. She understands that she needs to find a way to get inside the base. Then she notices that 2 cars are arriving at the base. Looking closer, she realizes that one of the cars is a crematorium garbage car. Looking at this car more carefully, she assumes that Xiao Miao is also in one of these cars. Suddenly, the cars stop abruptly. The reason for the stop is a tree that suddenly appeared on the road and blocked the road. After 2 cars stop, a bunch of workers immediately get out of them and try to solve the problem with the tree as quickly as possible. One of the workers runs away, saying that he needs to answer the call of nature, otherwise something extremely vile will happen. While the soldier is waging a merciless struggle with his bladder, he is being watched by the same girl with purple hair who is clearly planning something. Next, the girl quietly makes her way to this guy's back, and with a deft movement of her hand sends him to sleep. After the guy goes to bed, the Korean hitman takes all his clothes to impersonate him. After some time, one of the workers notifies everyone else that they are leaving soon. He shouts, asking if everything is in place. At this time, Hitman runs towards them. The girl, entering the car, sits on the seat and, hiding behind her cap, asks for forgiveness for being late. Meanwhile, a large man is clearly dissatisfied. Suddenly, this man grabs the Korean hitman by the shoulder and asks him why he was gone for so long. But the girl is stunned and doesn't know what to answer. However, after a few seconds of looking at the worker's condition, everyone begins to laugh loudly at the small size of one of the workers. But after a few minutes of laughter, everyone calms down and the car from the crematorium continues its route. Meanwhile, the spy girl, examining the body that this car is transporting, realizes that this is not who she is looking for. She is completely confused. Examining the guy from head to toe, the girl begins to feel sorry for him because he is also one of the gifted ones. Meanwhile, the car reaches its destination, or more precisely to the parking lot at the crematorium. Everyone around is going about their business. And the spy who entered this place in a cunning way is glad that she slipped inside so easily. She is confident that she will find Xiao Miao. Suddenly, the girl's spy stops abruptly on the orders of a large man who is older in rank. Approaching the girl, a guy with a large, muscular build points to the spy and asks who he is and why he hasn't seen him before. The girl froze in horror. She was surprised by 2 things: the huge size of this man with red hair and the way she was opened. Not hearing a quick answer, the guy with short red hair asks the soldier why there was no answer from him. Suddenly, the girl, realizing that she was caught, decides that it is time for her to act. She, calling on her magic, is going to decide this man's life. Suddenly, this colossal man suddenly remembers that a recruit arrived yesterday. He calls the recruit stupid and is going to leave him alone. However, this was not the case. A huge man pointing his fingers at the spy shouts at her that it was said many times first disinfection, and only after that entry. The frightened girl with green hair apologizes for her behavior and makes the excuse that she is really new and does not yet know many of the rules. Next, the man, shouting, points his index finger at the room above which disinfection is written and demands that the soldier immediately go there. The frightened girl has no choice but to obey any instructions, even though, according to her words, she never listens to them. After the spy girl manages to slip away even from such a thug, the girl relaxes. She is surprised by his responsibility and his surveillance. However, after the girl enters the disinfection room, she sees a bunch of men without clothes in front of her. She did not expect this at all and did not think about it. The girl immediately understands that she needs to get out of here as quickly as possible, but she can't because of the lock that won't open. Suddenly, a hand is placed on the shoulder of this spy girl. She is terrified because she really doesn't want to turn around again to see a bunch of men without clothes. Next, a guy without clothes with a short hair asks his colleague why he just stands in the department and doesn't undress. Meanwhile, we move to the basement of the crematorium in which our main, albeit dead, hero is carried on a stretcher by 2 crematorium workers. Suddenly, our main character confirms his honorary title of a cockroach because he is once again resurrected. We can understand this by his groans and movements. The main character slowly opens his eyes and sees the ceiling. Meanwhile, the 2 discuss his heavy weight. The first asks where they are taking him, the second answers to the archive. Having opened his eyes and regained consciousness, the main character wonders where he is and what is happening around him. Meanwhile, the guy looks at the workers who are carrying him and discusses the fact that they were unlucky today because they caught only one and he would not survive in the pit. Then our main character is thrown behind bars like some kind of garbage. In addition, he is called a goner who will be torn to pieces in a pit. The guy does not understand who is saying this. Lying behind bars, the guy is trying to understand where he is. He is so exhausted that he cannot even move his hand because his body is without a drop of strength. Trying to get up, the main character somehow manages to move, when suddenly he hears pleas for help from the other end of the bars. Looking at the other end of the prison cell, the guy sees just a huge mountain of human remains. He is shocked and cannot utter a word. Seeing this terrifying sight, cold sweat begins to form on the face of our main character. He still cannot understand what kind of terrible place this is. Suddenly, a huge monster suddenly appears in front of us from the darkness. She is the culprit of this huge mountain of human remains. A few moments later, this huge, terrible lizard monster completely emerges from the darkness and rushes straight towards our protagonist. The guy is so shocked that he does not understand what kind of huge monster is right in front of him. He is surprised by the colossal size of this monster. With just one movement towards our main character, this huge monster breaks everything that is in his way. He doesn't even need to try to cause damage to everything around him. Yanan continues to be perplexed by the incredible strength of this monster. He noticed how this monster easily bent the fence. This huge beast clearly hadn't eaten for a long time. Because it attacked our main character and had no intention of giving back, he continued to inflict bite after bite in an attempt to bite. Our main character still had the strength to somehow escape the blows of this huge beast, but his strength was at its limit. Yanan understood that if everything continued at the same pace, then this monster would simply devour him. Then the main character stumbled and got bitten. The next moment we watch as a huge lizard finally gets to its cherished prey. It bites our main character on the torso. It was very painful for Yanan, because this monster was not an ordinary huge lizard. It clung like a worm. It caused enormous pain and in addition absorbed energy. Suddenly, being in the mouth of a beast, our main character notices a red crystal that acts as an eye for this monster. The next step, our main character collected energy in his fist. He decided that if the monster wanted to taste his energy so badly, then he would give him such an honor. Then, having collected all the energy of magic into his fist, our main character swung and aimed straight at the eye. He decided to give him what he asked for. Immediately after Yanyan swings, she makes a very powerful blow, saturated with energy, directly into the crystal eye of this huge monster. The blow was so powerful that he was able to completely destroy the red crystal protruding from the eye of this monster with this blow. However, that was not all. A moment after the crystal in the reptile's eye was destroyed, the beast's head simply exploded. After Yanan dealt with the monster, he fell and sat down on the carcass of a dead beast, looking at the crystal of the monster. He realized that this thing and his mother's ring were similar. Suddenly, this crystal breaks out of the hands of our main character, who in turn is perplexed at what is happening and silently watches what is happening. Next, a red mysterious crystal flies into the air and begins to suck all the energy from our main character, and he feels it and doesn't know what to do. After a while, this red crystal absorbs everything possible to the last drop to such an extent that Yannan cannot even move. Next, this red crystal, saturated with energy, sits in the hair of our main character, causing the main character to ask in his thoughts whether he wants to die. Suddenly, the crematorium workers who heard the sounds of destruction see a huge grate that was destroyed. They do not understand what is happening. Next, these two workers run to the cell where our main character was locked up along with the monster, and when they reach, they observe the dead reptile and the unconscious guy. These two guys are overcome with horror. The first worker tells the second that they simply need to inform Mr. Yama about what happened. Meanwhile, the course of events moves back to the disinfection room. We realize that our Korean version of Hitman still has not made it out of there. The man standing in front of her repeatedly asks his colleague why he doesn't undress to take water procedures. He reminds them that they still need to get dressed. Meanwhile, the girl with green hair understands that she will soon be exposed, and she will have to somehow get out of this mess. Suddenly, a brilliant idea comes to the girl's head. Using her magic, she directs it to the floor and calls on the blue mouse Sigma, which should help her get out of this situation. A huge black jock with a pink mohawk immediately starts squealing like a girl at the sight of a little mouse. He immediately notifies everyone about this. Next, in the disinfection room, a real nightmare begins. All the guys around are running away in every direction just to escape from this terrifying mouse. While one group of guys are trying to get dressed in order to escape, the rest of the group is trying to catch the mouse at any cost, preventing it from escaping from here. Suddenly, this nimble mouse that creates a fuss jumps like Mario on the head of one of the soldiers, who asks the girl with green hair a lot of unnecessary questions. Next, one of the guys runs up to this soldier and asks him not to move, because right now he will deal with the terrifying mouse with the help of an iron bat. Suddenly, the girl takes out some strange metal weapon from somewhere, and smiling and watching the chaos taking place, apologizes for not taking part in such fun. Next, this girl, with her deft throw, throws her throwing weapon into a heat-conducting pipe, which easily breaks. The men around immediately notice the damage and do not understand where there is a leak from the pipeline in this room. They try to quickly turn the switch so that the cleaner does not leak out. While there is pure chaos in the disinfection room, the girl with green hair successfully leaves the place that was difficult for her to leave. Suddenly, the course of events is interrupted, and we are watching some big shot who is reporting on the phone that a bloody monster was killed with some kind of material. Walking through the corridors, an obvious big shot asks the soldiers around him if this material that killed the monster is still here. Next, the big shot appoints 2 workers to guard the archive, and at the cost of their lives not to leave it until he arrives. Having overheard this conversation, the girl smiles because she finds out that this group is heading to the archive, and in fact, she just needed to get there. After a while, this guy with a high status and various decorations becomes furious because some idiot killed his beloved pet. The frightened soldiers inform the highest rank that when his pet died, only our main character was able to move. Then the big shot asks where he is from. The soldiers answer that our main character came straight from the Zhao Family Corporation, while Yan Nan himself lies immobilized on the floor. A girl spy with green hair watching what is happening is shocked that the guy whom she recently saw dead is alive, and moreover, he killed a huge monster. Next, the big shot takes our main character by the head and declares that if he was able to destroy his beloved pet, then he is by no means a weakling. But this pseudo-elf continued that for everything done, it is necessary to pay, because it was he who killed the bloody monster, so he will turn it into his new pet. Next, this big shot calls on his strange technique, which has a large number of small but sharp blades. Once these little knives appear, they almost immediately dig into the back of the neck of our exhausted Sigma protagonist. After a while, as the seal of this pseudo-elf begins to act, our main character begins to scream in pain and clearly becomes more cheerful. Next, this arrogant, effeminate guy asks our main character if he woke up. At this time, Yananyu is in great pain. He doesn't listen at all to what they say to him, because right now he is focused on the seal that brings terrible pain that is on his neck. Next, this guy with a crystal in his forehead tells our main character that it is a great honor for someone like him to receive a servant's bone. The main character, who at this moment is experiencing terrible pain, asks the guy who he is and what he put on his neck. Nido Elf, raising his hand, explains to the guy that he doesn't need to know what it is because soon he will become his slave or his toy. Further, the pain of our main character from this thing on his neck becomes so unbearable that he begins to struggle in agony from the pain. Meanwhile, a thing called a servant's bone begins to grow throughout our protagonist's skeleton, gaining more and more control over his body. Next, the important person mockingly says that the servant's bone is directly implanted into the spinal column and takes control of the central nervous system. He continues, explaining that the more he twitches and convulses, the deeper the servant's bone penetrates into her skeleton. Therefore, the more torment our main character experiences, the more he is absorbed by the servant's bone, making him weak-willed. The essence of this technique is that it preserves these sufferings in the memory of the victim, thereby making a personal slave out of any person. Suddenly, something amazing happens that greatly impresses the elf. Our main character resists the servant's bone and says that he is not going to become a slave. At this time, the guy does not understand what is wrong with him, because unlike previous victims of the servant's bone, he can still control his body despite the presence of a bone on his neck. Suddenly, looking closely at the forehead of our main character, he notices that in his forehead there is a crystal core of a bloody monster. He wonders where he got it from. The guy gets furious again. He spreads his arms like Goku from Dragon Ball and summons his blue aura of power. Meanwhile, this loser looks back and doesn't understand why. After this guy spilled, all the objects around themselves began to rise up. The soldiers at this moment, also in bewilderment, do not understand what is happening. They only understand that after the guy shouted, the floor began to shake. Meanwhile, our berserker protagonist went into rage mode again, clenching his fists and looking up, screaming like a beast. At that moment, his enormous amount of power fought with the energy that was trying to suppress him and make him an obedient puppy like a streamer on Twitch. The guy's power was so enormous that she easily resisted the technique that seeped right into the guy's skeleton. Then the guy's power began to dominate. The next moment, the guy's power became so enormous that this pathetic seal simply could not withstand such a pressure of energy and broke into pieces. The guy's strength was growing so quickly that even this dude's hair was already starting to rise. This guy simply couldn't believe that someone was capable of breaking his servant's bone. At this time, the same spy girl who had been watching what was happening all this time was in shock. She could not understand whether she was dreaming about this or whether it was all really in reality. If she had a TikTok, she would have started a stream, because no one would have understood how such a boy was able to release such a powerful flow of energy. At some point in time, the main character's flow became so powerful that the ground beneath him literally collapsed, unable to withstand such power. Next, a wave so powerful came from Yananya that it was capable of knocking adult men off their feet. They could barely stand on their feet. The next frame we see how the shockwave was followed by a real explosion with another shockwave. The main character must have reached the limit. After the smoky curtain dissipates, we observe a real Giga Chad, from which a ton of power still exudes. However, unlike the last time when reaching such a huge level of power, this time the guy managed to maintain control over his body. At this moment, the effeminate guy, looking at our main character, realized that this dude had just raised his Sigma level to a new one, which means that his power had increased. Next, we watch a girl with green hair who continues to disguise herself. She woke up in the rubble and hopes that Xiao Miao is also here. She covers her nose due to the fact that due to the explosion of our main character's power, there is just a lot of dust in the air. Meanwhile, the girl hopes that Xiao Miao is okay. After some time, when the dust settles, the girl sees the very girl she was looking for all this time, but due to the explosion, she was seriously injured. A joyful girl runs up to Xiao Miao and, lifting her head, is glad that the one she was looking for is still alive. However, literally a few seconds later, she is interrupted by a flash of light that comes from right behind her. She does not understand what it is. Turning back, the girl watches Yananyu, who was able to successfully not only survive but also raise his level. The guy is puzzled and embittered because his bone could not subjugate this guy to his will. On the contrary, it only helped by helping to raise his level. Next, the big shot ordered his soldiers to spring into action and attack this guy and immediately take his life. However, the guy is not going to give up at all. Instead, he warns the crowd of people who are rushing towards him not to force him to use his powers. But after the Giga Chad sees that his art of manipulating people is not superior to that of a 7th grader, he decides to say it by force. The stones that scatter in the direction of these soldiers as a result of the impact hit them exactly on target, thereby neutralizing them. Even small fragments from stones are thrown with such force that they can individually neutralize any adult man in good shape. The pompous elf, watching his soldiers being scattered like babies, calls them a bunch of losers because they can't even do anything to a 2nd-level gifted one. When the girl with green hair who is hiding behind the cobblestones hears that this guy is only a 2nd-level gifted, she wonders how he can have such power. This girl is almost sure that the guy who rose from the dead still has special abilities hidden. It is possible that with his help she can save the village and Xiao Miao. But the girl decides that to begin with, the most reasonable solution would be to place this girl in her ring for her own safety and to ensure herself against accidents. Meanwhile, our main character realizes that from now on, he can finally use his abilities of his own free will, and not like a person who is drunk. Everyone around does not understand why a guy who is only gifted at the 2nd level is so strong and capable of destroying everything around him. But the elf does not share their opinion. Looking at his people, this guy is angry because, due to fear, his idiots are frozen in place and cannot move. Suddenly, this guy shouts to his people that he will promote by 1 level the one who kills him, and in addition to this, he will give 3 vials of green liquid that increases abilities. Hearing this, the soldiers immediately found themselves sensing an opportunity to profit from the murder. They immediately forgot about the fear that they had experienced just recently. These stupid idiots, even realizing the difference in strength, still all ran towards our main character at once, hoping that they could really win. However, our main character has already adapted to the feeling of battle, which is why, instead of trying to convince, he only called the fools to him to show who is boss. Next, the 2nd-level gifted raises his hands up to carry out his next combat step. With his incredible ability, this Sigma absorbs huge iron gates. He can already imagine the damage this can cause. Meanwhile, these previously brave soldiers now seem like ants based on their strength level, as they watch the grid become distorted and are ready to retreat. When they saw how this guy effortlessly folded himself into one huge metal lattice and prepared his grand attack, these soldiers knew they had a problem. After our main character collects the entire lattice into one, he brings it back onto the soldiers, and this lattice, like tsunami waves, rushes towards these losers. Then, a few seconds after this impromptu tsunami wave reaches the soldiers, it, like pita bread, creates a human shawarma out of the soldiers. Finding themselves trapped, these losers whine in pain and begin to ask our main character for help, despite the fact that a couple of minutes ago they tried to kill him. Meanwhile, the guy again scolds his soldiers, reproaching them for not even surviving one round. He reports that this guy is dangerous and it's too dangerous to let him go. Our main character rubs his chin and tells these idiots that he won't give in to them just like that. Now he intends to teach the pompous guy a lesson. However, the guy to whom our main character wanted to teach a lesson disappeared somewhere. It was as if he had disappeared. The guy did not understand where he had gone. Suddenly, a pompous guy standing behind our main character asks him if he is looking for him. Yanan realizes in shock what happened. However, the guy realizes that his opponent is behind him too late, because the elf already manages to grab our main character by the hand and use a spell. Having used his technique on the hand of our main character, this guy tells him to taste the full power of his strength. Meanwhile, the poison continues to spread throughout the guy's hand. The guy scrunched up his face from the instant pain he experienced and asked this bastard what he did to him. In his thoughts, Yanan understood that he felt as if his hand was simply burning. Or more precisely, this guy seemed to have burned the hand of our protagonist alive. Falling to his knees and clutching his hand, which continued to burn alive, the guy realized that his affairs were very bad and his strength was beginning to drain away. Appearing before the exhausted guy again, this pompous guy says that he did not expect that so many techniques would have to be spent on him, but he still captivated him. But now, according to this dude, the life of our main character will end because he aimed that very technique at Yanani's head. However, the plans of this pompous guy are once again interrupted. This time he is separated from our main character by a strip of violet flame that separates them. Jumping away from the purple flame, the dissatisfied elf asks who dared to do this. He turns around to find the culprit. Suddenly, the same woman with green hair who watched everything that happened in the crematorium from the very beginning stands up for our main character. Suddenly, the girl answers this pompous guy that he doesn't need to know who she is, so she won't answer anything. But the girl continues by saying that they are in the crematorium, under the pretext of processing corpses, killing gifted people, and creating complete chaos. This girl continued her speech by saying that if the Council of Elders finds out about all this, they will immediately expel them all from the Alliance. Meanwhile, the white-haired one, offended by the interruption of the battle, says that he doesn't care about the Council of Elders because the affairs of the crematorium are none of her business. However, the girl with green hair is not going to continue the conversation. Instead, she asks our main character if he can move. The guy holding his wound with his hand tells the girl that he feels very bad. The girl sits down on her knee and hands Sigma a pill and asks her to take it. Holding a pill in his hands, the guy asks what it is. The girl explains that he came under the influence of the corpse poison of the small Yama, and this medicine helps to restore strength. After the guy obeys the request and takes the pill, he really feels how the medicine begins to act throughout his body and also tickles his veins pleasantly. Just a couple of seconds later, he feels that the medicine is working very quickly, and now he can move again. He is surprised at such a quick effect. Finally getting to his feet, the slightly lame guy asks the girl why she decided to suddenly intervene and help him. And the green-headed one replies that she will definitely tell him everything in detail if he gets out of here alive. After a couple of moments, the girl again switches to Yama Small, asking him how he dares to break the law and be willful. She also says that she will punish him instead of giving advice. After Yama the Small hears the girl's intention to punish him, he grins and tells the girl that at least it's not harmful to dream. Meanwhile, the terribly evil Yama the Small said that she snuck into the crematorium, and this dumbass killed his beloved pet. He did not intend to let these two out alive. Next, Yama Meili presses some button, and everything around begins to shake violently. The main character did not understand what was happening and what this idiot had done. Looking around, they see how this idiot released dozens of zombie slaves and ordered them to shred our main character and the girl next to him. These two, looking around, realize that there are too many zombie slaves around, and they will have a very hard time if they get into battle with them. While fighting back, these two realize that something is wrong here. Because there are more and more zombies, the girl adds that all of these are former gifted people turned into slaves. The girl tells the guy that if the fight continues like this, they will definitely be captured. She says that they need a way to escape. She asks if he can control objects. While fighting off zombie slaves, the guy says that this is his ability. He also adds that he seems to be able to make weapons out of objects. Next, the girl, moving away from the guy, tells him to wait for her order, and then they attack together. Yan Yan hears the girl and accepts. After this, moving away a little, the girl begins to use her weapon technique and twirl her braid like a fidget spinner, popular in 2014. Our main character asks the girl how much longer he can hold back the pressure, because there are too many of them and he won't be able to hold out for long. Suddenly, the girl sharply gives a sign to our main character to act. This meant that he had to sharply use his powers. The hero reacts with lightning speed, using his magic to fly into the air like Homelander. Then he listened to the girl's instructions. The girl with green hair instructs Sigma to use her powers as quickly as possible to absorb the fragments of the iron fence. The guy again carries out the order with a lightning-fast reaction. After a few seconds, all the iron fragments of the iron fence fly into the air. Yama Small does not understand what is happening, what these two idiots are up to, but he begins to panic because of the unknown. Next, the girl with green hair making her attack forms a real deadly tornado mixed with sharp fragments of barriers. The crowd of zombies has no chance against this deadly tornado with blades. They become almost useless as a chihuahua as a house watchman. Falling into a zombie tornado, the servants stumble upon the blades that our main character called, thereby leaving them with very little chance of somehow surviving. This tornado even touches Yam Meili himself, because it reaches him too. Covering himself with his hands, he scolds these two scoundrels. When the tornado ends its effect and dissipates, only even more lifeless bodies remain on the ground than before. Yama Meili also received quite a few wounds. Fragments of obstacles stuck out from his back, shoulder, and forearm, and were dug into his body. However, what worries this pompous guy most is that with all these actions, these two managed to punch a huge hole in this room. Yama the Small, beside himself with anger, clenched his hands and ordered his people to immediately go in search of these scoundrels. He was going to destroy them. This guy was so angry that he opened his mouth and screamed at the sky, saying that as soon as he finds these two, he will solve them. Meanwhile, the girl with the scythe and our main character had already moved a great distance away from this loser, but they still heard his voice even from here. After the two remained in a safe place, this girl introduced herself to our main character Feng Li from the Feng family. Sigma thanked the girl for saving her. After some time, our main character again takes his hand and says that it is inflamed again. The girl added that the poison will soon reach the palm. This is still a good result. The girl convinced Yanani that because of the use of abilities with such an arm, he should be grateful that he was alive. The hero asked what he should do because he would soon be without an arm. However, the girl said that since she took up the rescue, she would help him to the end, after which she asked the guy to take off his clothes. The girl repeated her words, saying that for treatment he needed to get rid of clothes in certain areas. The guy was embarrassed. Next, the girl, running her fingers over the knife, told the guy that if he wants to save his hand, he needs to obey her instructions. After the guy exposed his arm and showed us his incredible biceps of about 38 to 45 centimeters, he gave the girl the opportunity to release the poison. Next, the girl took out a bottle with an unknown liquid, and holding our main character, warned him that now it would be very painful for him. He asked if the cut would hurt more. Feng Li didn't even bother to answer our poor protagonist's question. She poured a healing potion directly onto the hero's hand. Immediately after this, a very loud sound of birds was heard, which most likely made the birds and not only wake up, probably even Yama Small heard it. Feng Li reacted very late, and only after a few seconds of terrible screaming, she covered our chief's mouth with her hand, telling him to shut up. She yelled at him, asking why he was yelling like crazy. She reminded him that they could still be captured by the people of the crematorium, and it would be much more painful and dangerous there. The guy tried to justify himself that he didn't do it on purpose, but the girl reminded him that even the bone of Yama the Small's servant didn't take him, and now he went broke because of some kind of weed. Approaching suspiciously close to our main character, he mumbled that she did not warn, but after that a romantic silence hung between them. In his thoughts, our main character thought that his hand immediately stopped hurting, and then he began to drown in the eyes of Feng Li, and she began to drown in the eyes of our Sigma. After this rather awkward incident, the two immediately turned away from each other just like children. In order to dispel the silence, the hero asked what kind of medicine it was. Feng Li, not completely overcoming her awkwardness, replied that this was a special medicine from her Feng village. It was created only for the treatment of gifted people like him. However, according to the girl, the poison penetrated too deeply, and even without this he has enough wounds, so it is impossible to say when our hero will fully recover. An hour later, we watch our main character, who is already feeling better. Feng Li calls him lucky because he recovered very quickly, but Sigma thanks the medicine. Next, Feng Li used her ring to summon clothes, telling Yan Yan that his clothes were very worn out, so she would give him another new one. The surprised guy asked Feng Li why she carries men's rags with her. The girl answered with a wink that she puts them on for disguise. After a couple of moments, we watch our fashionista dress up and leave a good review of the clothes. Feng Li rolls her eyes and says that there is nothing to be surprised about because her eye is a diamond. Next, the guy thanks the girl for everything she did to him, but says that he has urgent business. He says that he will repay later, but it's time for him to go. It is immediately clear from this girl that she does not want the macho Sigma to leave her. She tells him that his wounds have not yet healed. She invites him to rest at least a little. Next, Yan Yan clarifies the situation by saying that he and his sister were attacked by killers and he lost control when he fought with them. Then he woke up in the crematorium and needs to look for his sister. The girl decided to help by saying that she heard that he came from the Zhao Family Corporation. She suggested that perhaps his sister should be safe. Next, Feng Li began to explain in detail that the Zhao Family Corporation is the organization responsible for the Awakened One, and he awakened and was killed, so he was sent here. And then, for some reason unknown to anyone, our main character miraculously resurrected, thereby breaking the chain. After this explanation, the guy literally realized that he needed to look for his sister in the Zhao Family Corporation. Feng Li considered him crazy. Suddenly, the girl asks if he even knows where the corporation is. She hoped that after returning, he would not look for it on the internet. After all, the world of the gifted and the human society in which he lived are very different, and Feng Li in turn can show the way. She offered help in return for help. But the girl's condition was to first visit the village of the Feng family. The hero immediately wondered what this point was for. Meanwhile, we move to the office of the CEO of the Zhao Family Corporation. Two guys report to him as director. Tyler Durden, an early acquaintance to us, looks at the floor and apologizes that what happened was due to his negligence, but with the help of his sister's genes, he corrected the mistake. Tyler Durden or Li Jai continued that Nanya was truly dead then, but somehow survived. He used an ability that was previously unknown to them. At this time, the general director ordered his assistants to make sure that our protagonist's sister wakes up as quickly as possible, because this way they can get information. This time Li Jai got away with his negligence. The general director informed him that he could go, but with a warning so that this would not happen again. Leaving the CEO's office, Li Jai thought that this damn new guy almost ruined his file. After Li Jai leaves, the CEO gets up from his chair and looking out the window says that there is noise in the crematorium because of the incident. Even a bloody monster died. That is why, in order not to spoil the relationship with the crematorium, the director ordered them to find this Ya Nan. Xiaobai asked the director who would do this. The director answered the question by saying that he had already entrusted this case to Laka, and at that time, he told the guy to look after the guy's sister so that no problems would arise. Xiaobai was dissatisfied with hearing that the general director sent for our main character, Mr., because Yan Yan awakened just recently, and his abilities. The man in the burgundy jacket stopped Xiaobai, saying that Lakey also needs practice from time to time, and besides, they have a sister, Yan Yanya, so he will not kill him. The rector further mentioned that a few days ago the rift widened, and a huge amount of energy came out from there, and this probably awakened a new gifted gene. The rector added that if this is really so, then very big and serious changes are coming. Meanwhile, we move to the forests that are on the outskirts. We watch a guy in a white robe who is humming some kind of melody. This guy was the same Lek whom we had recently heard about. He wondered why they suddenly remembered him. Did they really decide to ask him? Laki also suggested that the old man found out that he had learned a new spell, and that is why he organized the search. Having sat down near the slope of the mountain, Leek said that if he had known that everything would turn out this way, he would not have tried at all. Meanwhile, we understand that this guy in white sat down to rest for a reason. After a few seconds, his body begins to exude a lot of golden-colored energy. After some time, one strong stream of golden energy is divided into small, thin, and long threads of energy that diverge in different directions. Suddenly, these golden threads discover something. Leek realizes that a strange bloody beast has appeared very close to the city. Lake was sure that now his old man would definitely praise him for such quick successes. Golden threads continued to surround the owner. Meanwhile, we begin to observe Feng Li and Yan Yan running somewhere through the forest together. They are clearly in a hurry to somewhere. Suddenly, our main character runs out of steam and asks Feng Li to stop. She in turn switches to the language of facts and asks if he wanted to quickly find his sister. Suddenly, our main character begins to shake violently. He falls to his knees and, clutching himself, asks Feng Li to give him 2 minutes. Concerned, Feng Li immediately rushes to our protagonist, asking if the poison has begun to spread throughout his body again. Bent over like a wheel, Yan replies that it is not his arm that hurts, but his spine. He also adds that from such wild pain he cannot even straighten up. Next, Feng Li comes up to our hero from behind and tells him that she will examine his spine. After she lifts the robe, she does an analysis. Suddenly, notes of horror appear on her face. She thinks that things are bad because fragments of the servant's bones still remain in his spine, thereby bringing him pain. Raising the robe even higher, she sees how on 2 more areas of the back there are the remains of a servant's bone, which sharply forced Yanani to bend in half. Next, these 2 climbed a tree to protect themselves from random incidents on the ground. The caring girl continued to examine the problem with our main character's back. Meanwhile, the guy with a very unhappy face from pain turns to the girl and asks how the situation with his back is. Concerned, Feng Li informs our main character that his wound has opened and there are pieces of the servant's bone left inside. The guy suggested that if removed, everything would be fine. However, the girl is forced to say that it is not so simple, because the servant's bone is a secret development of the crematorium. If placed in a person, he will obey for the rest of his life and lose consciousness. According to rumors, only King Yama can completely remove the bone of a servant. The main character turns around to ask if this is the father of Yama the Small. The girl says that this is not so, because this position is occupied thanks to one's own abilities, and the battle for this place can be very fierce. Fei Li hands the guy 2 medicines and says that she only has so much left. She adds that they will help weaken the control of the servant's bone at the right time. Then the main character immediately uses one of them. He immediately feels like the medicine is really very effective against hellish pain. Suddenly, our main character, using his spider sense, hears that behind him in the leaves of an oak tree, he was listening to some strange rustling. Next, these 2 are attacked by a huge, outlandish, bloody monster who intends to finish off both of them at once with one attack. The guy, worried about the girl, grabs her so that she bends down as quickly as possible in order to avoid the attack of this strange, bloody beast. They miraculously manage to duck down in time and escape the deadly attack of this huge beast. Just a little more and they would have been turned into a cutlet. After the bloody beast misses with its run, it rushes on, demolishing everything in its path. This beast is very strong and has a ton of physical strength. Then this monster stops and, against the backdrop of destroyed trees, is about to immediately make a new run again towards these 2. The guy cannot help but notice that this strange, bloody beast is especially furious and is clearly different from other animals in some way. Meanwhile, our main character will have time to wonder what he just felt, because it was very soft and warm. Looking under himself, he most likely understands what's what. After this very awkward incident, Feng Li pushes our main character away and, embarrassed, shouts at him that he cannot afford to do such a thing yet. However, while these 2 were sorting things out among themselves, a huge, outlandish, bloody monster did not wait until they finished and rushed at them. Next, Sigma makes a lightning-fast decision to push away his companion as quickly as possible so that she doesn't get hit. The girl is shocked that the guy is strong, even with pain. A moment after our main character manages to save the girl from a collision with the beast, he is left to take this blow alone. The guy who took the blow from this huge, outlandish beast understood that he had just received a lot of unwanted damage. After the collision, this demonic wild boar continued its run, heading with our main character on its muzzle straight into the wise tree from Skyrim. A few seconds later, the bloody beast throws our main character with all his might against the wise tree, thereby breaking it in half. After our main character falls to the ground, he looks at this crazy beast who is again ready to run towards Yananya. The beast does not need much time to start its run. Meanwhile, Yanan manages to get up and run at the last second before the collision, even with pain in the spine. The bloody strange beast continues to press the poor fellow, constantly running towards him, but thanks to his sensitive reflexes, the hero manages to avoid the blow. Meanwhile, while Yanan continues to evade the attacks of this crazy beast in every possible way, Feng Li looks at this and understands that she needs to find a way to help. After some time, the girl gathers her strength and is going to strike the beast with lightning to help the main character. However, this crushing shock charge hits poor Yanan, who is already having a hard time in this battle. Even a huge beast stops at the sight of this misunderstanding and bulges its eyes in surprise at what just happened. At this time, Feng Li, looking at this from the side, covers her mouth with her hand to hide her laughter and makes an excuse that her hand slipped and it was not her fault. After some time, the confrontation between man and the bloody beast continues according to the previous scenario. Yanan is surprised that the girl, in addition to the wind, owns lightning. The girl with green hair explains to the guy that she has elemental powers, which means that she can generate and control all types of weather. After Yanan finds out that his companion has a flash, he on the run invites her to properly charge this boar with lightning while he distracts him. However, the girl's next attempt to be hit by lightning will not be crowned with success. She charges a stone that is located right in front of the monster's nose with lightning. Immediately after the second unsuccessful lightning charge, a third one follows, which also misses the monster and almost hits our main character. A girl with green hair and not very good eyesight continues desperately trying to hit the monster with her lightning, but each attempt is worse than the other. These lightning bolts that the girl tries to direct at the monster often hit our main character, and in addition to dodging the beast, he has to dodge the lightning bolts. Meanwhile, the main character, who is already tired of dodging the girl's endless attempts to get hit by this lightning, shouts at her, saying that it's time for her to get hit. Meanwhile, our main character is completely distracted from the battle and very quickly regrets it. Before he can blink an eye, he finds himself in the monster's mouth. Next, the animal, with a satisfied expression on its face that it has finally caught this guy who is constantly running away, begins to run away with him in its mouth. Yan'an tries to do everything to make the beast let him go, but all to no avail. Instead, the beast makes a long jump to move away from the girl. The girl has no choice but to look after our main character, because even if she wants to, she is still unlikely to get hit by some kind of attack. Meanwhile, the satisfied beast, carrying its prey in its teeth straight into its cozy cave, runs there. The hero continues to try to free himself. Suddenly, we observe that all this time Lake, who was sent by the general director of the corporation, was watching everything that was happening from a tree. He did not understand what was happening. Judging by Laki's face just from watching what was happening, he was already tired of all the troubles that happened between these three. After the bloody strange beast runs into its cave with its prey, it carefully places it on the floor and begins to sniff it. Next, our main character sees the second individual of this type of bloody monster. He understands that the one to whom he was brought looks like a female, and he apparently is a bride price. Meanwhile, Leek also makes his way into this cave and, hiding behind a cobblestone and taking out a crossbow with a scope, realizes that he has correctly tracked them down. Next, this guy in a white robe takes a closer look at our main character and realizes that all this time this is the one for whom the old man sent him. After Laka discovers our main character, he takes out his crossbow and, placing a dart there, aims at him. Judging by his face, he is glad that he will accidentally complete the task. A moment later, our main character becomes the target of this shot, and Lake, due to the effect of surprise, easily hits the target. Taking out a dart with unknown contents from his chest, the guy takes it in his hands and wonders what it is and what happened. Meanwhile, Laki is happy that he hit our main character, even though there was absolutely nothing stopping him from taking this shot. Next, the female to whom our main character was brought furiously swings her huge paw with claws at Yan'an, trying to strike. However, this female bloody outlandish monster is stopped by Feng Li, who has just recently arrived and once again shoots lightning, almost hitting the main character. Next, the girl continues to try to inflict at least some damage, but all her projectiles continue to fall only at the feet of our poor protagonist. A guy who is preparing for battle after his girlfriend arrives to him says that the cracks in different worlds have widened and strange animals appear from there, so he calls for fighting. After this, the guy with white hair takes a fighting stance and imbues his hands with his magical energy. He is ready to deal with the bloody monsters. The guy blocks the bite that was directed at him. Using his ability to manipulate objects, he generates an improvised shield from stones. After Yan'an successfully uses his ability and blocks the blow, he makes a dash and forms a hole in the shield, and is about to attack the monster in the face. However, the guy does not have time to attack, because this monster raises its muzzle upward due to the fact that after it bit the hard stone, its teeth break. The hero is surprised. Due to the fact that the stone was too hard, the teeth break, and the beast enters in a state of rage, he angrily breaks these stones and screams menacingly. Running away from the terrifying beast, Yan'an realizes that his affairs are very bad, because this huge outlandish beast has gone crazy because it damaged its teeth. Being enraged, the huge beast becomes much faster and thereby catches up with our main character, carrying out a very powerful blow with its horns on the guy's back. The blow is so strong that it forces our main character to fly several tens of meters away from the point of collision. The hero receives a lot of damage. Flying further, our hero rolls across the floor to Leek, who is in cover. Meanwhile, the guy in white looks at our main character with a puzzled look. After our main character moves away from the blow, he points his index finger at the guy in white and asks who he is and what he's doing here. The guy replies that he's just a passerby. Then, following the guy in white and our main character, two huge, strange beasts with red eyes run out of the cave. They are mad with rage. A guy in white clothes warns our main character that these animals have gone crazy, and it's getting dangerous here. But the guy understood that if he couldn't escape, he would have to fight. Next, Yan'an, crouching on one knee, begins to use her magic, surrounding her right hand with those very strong stones that are capable of breaking the teeth of even monsters. Having prepared his weapon and taken a pose for a powerful blow, our protagonist waited for the ideal moment to deliver a powerful blow. Having waited for that perfect moment, our main character hits a powerful uppercut right in the face of this monster, after which the monster does not have a single chance. This uppercut, reinforced by strong stones, was so strong that it immediately knocked out this huge, strange beast. Even the hand of our protagonist suffered from such a blow. Looking at his hand, which he had just recently been poisoned in the crematorium, the guy realizes that after this blow, his wound began to hurt even more than before. Suddenly, Leaky calls our main character and, pointing his finger at the beast, warns him that this male in a state of rage will rush straight at them right now. However, at this moment, Feng Li comes onto the stage and, running up, tells our main character to step aside as quickly as possible and let her attack. Next, Feng Li flies into the air, and with his huge scythe, instead of attacking the beast, he cuts out a tree trunk and tells the guy to use his strength to pin the beast to the ground with a tree. Our main character, as always, instantly grasps everything on the fly. With his own strength, he presses the beast, thereby fixing it in place. At this time, the girl is preparing to attack. Having landed on a log that is being crushed by a huge monster, the girl raises her scythe to attack and rushes straight towards the defenseless monster that cannot escape anywhere. After the girl reaches the distance in which she can strike with her scythe, she swings strongly, preparing a powerful, deadly attack. A moment later, the girl makes a powerful blow with her scythe along an ideal trajectory, thereby killing the male of a huge, outlandish beast. Landing epically after killing a huge, bloody monster, the girl asks our main character if everything is okay with him. And Leek, falling from the terrible picture of how the huge head of a furious beast falls in front of him, backs away in horror and realizes that this woman is terrible. Next, our main character approaches the blonde man in a white robe. Apparently, he has a number of very important questions about who he is and what he is doing here. After this, Yanan takes out a dart from somewhere that was sent to his chest out of nowhere and invites the so-called passerby to talk. First of all, our main character asks what kind of dart this is. The guy replies that it is the usual amount of medicine that enhances abilities. The girl asks the reason for his help. Meanwhile, the interrogation continues. The guy admits that he strengthened our main character due to the fact that he alone would not have defeated these huge monsters. However, the girl with green hair, despite this guy's coherent explanation, still doubts the purity of his intentions. The guy claims that his conscience is clear. Meanwhile, while these two continue their conversation, our main character is distracted by looking at the juicy meat of this monster. The crystal inside Yananya's head begins to glow. Suddenly, the guy unconsciously picks up one large piece of meat from this huge, strange beast and realizes that he is eager to eat it. However, despite the fact that our main character was separated from the bite by just a second, these two suddenly cried out that this was impossible under no circumstances. These two immediately run up to the guy saying that he cannot eat random animals even if he is very hungry, and Lake calls him crazy because it can be poisonous. Thanks to these two people who managed to approach our main character at the last moment, he manages to come to his senses and not eat this piece of unknown meat. After some time of thinking, Yanan comes to the answer that it is the red, mysterious crystal in his head that is to blame for the fact that some force is leading him to strange actions. Meanwhile, these three guys look up and watch the wind appear around. Yanan and Feng Li do not understand what is happening, but Leek is very happy with what he saw. What all three of them were looking at was a helicopter that was landing right next to these three guys. Apparently, these were members of the corporation. Meanwhile, watching the landing of the helicopter, Yanan and his companion wondered why the plane from the Zhao family corporation had flown here. Next, we watch as a satisfied Leek points a finger at himself and reports that he was the one who called the helicopter because he wanted to get paid for the dead animals. What the guy in the white robe hears alarms our main character because he just finds out that this guy was from the Zhao family corporation all along. Next, Yanan, showing his fighting spirit, tells him that his corporation took his sister away from him. But Leek is not at all aware of what the guy is talking about. He does not understand what is wrong with the old man who sent him here. Laki quickly finds a way out of this situation. He points with his hand at the helicopter that is about to land and says that if they don't believe him, they can fly with him. The girl with green hair reminds our main character that he just needs to get into the corporation. Because his sister is there, Yanan is also ready for this. Next, we watch as the course of events is transferred to a huge skyscraper. It's a clear, sunny day outside. Next, we watch as some girl enters the CEO's office. She immediately explains that she came for a man who killed a bloody beast with his bare hands. A guy in a burgundy jacket tries to convince an arrogant woman that they shouldn't ruin their friendship because of a newcomer, but the girl continues to stand her ground. Next, The girl reminds this man that hundreds of years ago the old Congress established the rules. All gifted people must protect the cracks and exterminate the animals from there. After this woman with long red hair finished the conversation, she again said that she needed that person who defeated the bloody monster and walked away. Meanwhile, we are moving to the roof of this building, where a landing site has been established. A helicopter with Leke, Yanan, and Fen Li has already arrived, and they were landing. They were met by two already familiar members of the Xiaobai Corporation and his henchmen. They greeted their teacher by waving their hands. Then the previously mentioned passengers get out of the helicopter. Lake waves his hand in response to these two guys and asks if they were expecting their personal meeting. The guy with long black hair replied that now they were going to prepare the materials and later wait for the arrival of Laka's mother. After the guy in a white robe heard that his mother would soon arrive here, he was immediately happy. The guy replied that his mother's arrival was connected with the difficult situation at the base. Meanwhile, our main character looked in surprise at Xiaobai, who was very politely and smilingly communicating with a guy in a white robe. The reason for his surprise was that their first acquaintance took place in a severe battle in which the two of them suffered serious injuries. Suddenly, the main character realizes that this bastard with long hair literally killed him, which is why he ended up in the crematorium. After our main character remembers who is standing in front of him right now, he approaches him and, taking him by the jacket, calls him an idiot. Yanan continues to attack the guy who killed him. He tells him that he took his sister, and then he demanded answers to where his beloved sister Jia is. Xiaobai did not intend to enter into conflict again. He raised his hands and asked our protagonist not to worry and listen to him. Then he informed that his sister could not wake up. However, our main character, despite explanations, refutes everything said by this bastard and declares that his sister can definitely wake up. Then he demanded to be taken to her. Meanwhile, the conversation between these three guys is interrupted by Lek, looking to the side, joyfully calling for his mother. Xiaobai and Yanan are surprised. Next, we see a woman with red hair and glasses whom we have already seen earlier. Her name is Nan Gongyan. She is happy to meet our main character. At this time, Yanan and his companion with green hair stand dumbfounded with their mouths open, because this woman is from the house of the Zhao family, from the legends of Lady Mother Nan Gongyan. Next, we watch as our main character, sitting next to his sister who really cannot wake up, tells her that her brother has returned. He takes his sister's gentle hand with his own and asks her to open her eyes so that she can be convinced that everything is fine with her brother and he is alive and well. At this moment, the same woman from the legends approaches our main character from behind. She puts her hand on the guy's shoulder and gives him greetings from the entire Zhao family. Next, the girl apologizes for the fact that they underestimated his death and caused him harm, because of which his sister got sick. But the woman promised that they would do everything to save her. When our main character hears that she got sick because she was told that he was dead, he is surprised and cannot believe what was said and asks the woman to clarify. Next, the woman with red hair says that his sister has a rare heart disease, and that is why she cannot be greatly shocked and made to worry. After this, the girl with a calm expression adds that judging by her genetic report, she may not even live to be 20 years old. Yanan is shocked by what she heard. Next, the girl reassures the guy by saying that he doesn't need to worry, because this diagnosis was relevant only before meeting the Zhao family. Then she instructed him to tell Tyler Durden. Tyler Durden from Fight Club begins to explain to our main character that his sister has special genes because she is also one of the gifted ones. Tyler continues, secondly, she needs stimulation from the outside world to awaken her abilities by borrowing power from the second personality she can awaken. But there is one important nuance, which is that in the process of awakening and self-healing, they will need a large amount of energy medicine. The guy immediately asks where he can get these drugs that will help awaken his sister. He is going to start searching right now. The girl answers the guy's question by saying that the main method of obtaining it is through cracks, because the closer people get to the crack, the more abnormal and dangerous energy is generated. Next, the guy, full of confidence in his abilities, says that he is not afraid of any danger as long as he can save his own sister. After Nan Gongyan hears that our main character is ready to risk his life for his sister, she calls him a really good brother. On this note, the conversation ends and our main character goes out into the corridor, in which his green-haired friend Fei Li is waiting for him, who asks how the conversation went. The guy, looking a little sadly at the floor, says that he needs to go to the village in order to save his sister. Feng Li asks why he needs to go somewhere. Yanan explains that he needs to get there for the rift. The girl asks if he wants to join the corporation. Looking into the room where his sister is lying, the guy says that he needs to get energy medicine to save his sister, and for this he needs dangerous faults. Feng Li, as always, taking care of our main character, tells him that he has only recently been resurrected and his abilities are not yet stable. The guy replies that there is a training cabin at the base. Suddenly, Yanan tells the girl that she can be sure that after he saves his sister, he will go to the girl's home village to find her. Then the girl, with a sad expression on her face, turns around and, repeating after our main character, falls silent. Yanan does not understand what is happening. Suddenly, Fei Li tells our main character that she originally wanted him to help her save the people of her village, but she didn't know how to say it. Suddenly, the girl says that perhaps it is already too late, and there is no point in returning to the village because no one can be saved. Then the frame switches to Tyler Durden, who all this time was around the corner eavesdropping on all the conversations. He was very annoyed that Yanan was still under protection. Next, Fei Li hands our main character a bottle with the contents of her blood. She says that this will help him because she will not be able to return with him. The girl tells our main character if he doesn't have time to ask about the children. Moreover, she's not sure that everything will work out for them. The main character agrees to everything because she saved his life. After the girl gets the bottle back, she places it in her ring, just like inventory in Minecraft, and thanks the guy for his help. She asks when they are leaving. Yanan replies that according to Madame Zhao's intentions, they must leave for a mission tomorrow. Fei Li is surprised at how quickly they leave because she is worried about the condition of our main character. She asks him about his slave bone that remains in his back. The guy replies that Madame Zhao told him that when they get to the base, she will find a way to help. Feng Li turns away with displeasure because he listened to the madam. Further, the girl still admits that Zhao's medical technologies are indeed the most advanced among large organizations, and the overall medical power is better. She also admits that perhaps they can actually find a way to help rid our protagonist of the remains of a slave bone in his back. After this girl finishes her speech, she begins to walk away and throws something to our main character. He catches it, and the girl says that these are pills that will help him with pain. Turning around with a sad face, the tsundere says this is the herbal medicine that she gave earlier to relieve the pain from the development of the slave's bones. The guy briefly thanks the girl for yet another help, and the girl, leaving further, says that when he found his sister, all she has to do is return to the village where the others are waiting for her. After this, the girl continues to leave and tells our main character that they will see each other again. She also hopes that the next time they meet, he will become a stronger person. Our main character also says goodbye, but much shorter. Holding the medicine in his hands, he definitely intends to become stronger in order to avenge his mother, protect his sister, and live a better life. The course of events is interrupted, and we continue as a certain group of corporation members goes to the fault site to extract energy. Meanwhile, the same lady of the Zhao family and our main character are sitting in one of the cars. The woman tells the guy that they have already driven into the wind cracks. The guy asks what it is, to which he receives the answer that hundreds of years ago, 5 cracks opened in the world, from which creatures and energy from another world escaped. In addition to the fact that this energy brought new abilities and magic to people, it also brought chaos to the world and a deadly threat to the earth in the form of monsters. And their organization, as one of the top 10 organizations, is protecting one of the most important one of the 5 great cracks. Surprised by the story, the main character, out of interest, asks Mrs. Zhao where the other 4 cracks are. The woman with red hair responds to this by saying that all the other 4 cracks are in Fengjia village, Yizhuang, in the Garden of Eden, and in Xinshan. After hearing this, the guy is surprised that initially gifted people were very important, but now their responsibility is for the safety of human society. Suddenly, Mrs. Zhao, looking at our main character, says that from now on she is from the Zhao clan, so he does not need to rely on his abilities to do wrong like some. Suddenly, the driver of the car in which these two were located loses control of the car, and they all crash into some kind of obstacle. This obstacle turns out to be a red beetle monster of simply terrifying colossal size. He intends to destroy the car along with those who are there. However, all 4 passengers of this car immediately recognize the source of danger and simultaneously make one decision to urgently get out of the car. Getting out of the car, Mrs. Zhao looked at the huge beast and did not understand how a high-level alien beast could appear next to their base. After this, the woman jumps on the roof of the car and, standing on the car, shouts for everyone else to go to the back room. The guys also immediately left the car. Yanan asks why they don't help those in trouble. The other guy replies that it's a high-level alien beast that they can't handle. The second guy at this time tells our main character that he was very lucky to come to see this fascinating battle for the first time. Next, a high-level huge alien beetle lunges at Mrs. Zhao, but she in turn remains calm. She manages to summon her spell in a short period of time. Purple clots of energy and small purple spiky balls appear near her hands. A moment later, the girl sends these purple balls of strange origin straight towards a high-level monster. Even though this beetle has a huge level and alien origin, it still takes a lot of damage from Lady Zhao's attack. Then this woman with incredibly powerful magic, with a few movements of her hands, masterfully destroys this huge beetle with the help of her balls. After the girl deals with this huge high-level beetle, she shows one finger and says that he was not worthy of one blow. Meanwhile, Yan'an, who had been watching the fight all this time, was shocked that Mrs. Zhao had such an incredible level of strength that she was able to deal with the monster with one blow. Suddenly, the guy's forehead once again turns red because of the red crystal in his forehead. He doesn't understand why his forehead is heating up again. He begins to smell a very fragrant smell. After Yan'an sees the remains of this delicious beetle, he runs towards them as if juicy KFS wings or a Big Mac from McDonald's were lying on the ground. The woman who dealt with the monster reports this to the base and tells everyone to go to the base. Xiaobai looks around and calls Yan'an to go after them. After they see that the main character has completely gone crazy, these two try to pull him away from the meat of this monster, but this is very difficult for them. At this moment, our main character is noticed by Mrs. Zhao, who notices a core in our main character's forehead. She does not understand how a person can have the core of a beast. Next, Yan'an escapes from the hands of the mistress's wards, who tried to keep him away from the humanoid's meat. He is once again surrounded by a mysterious force. A few moments later, the body of our main character flies into the air and energy begins to emanate from the monster's corpse, which is sent straight to our main character. Two guys from the corporation watching the process don't understand how the energy of a bloody beast can be collected on a guy. The second guy asks if they need energy-increasing drugs. Meanwhile, Mrs. Zhao is the most surprised because a person who can directly absorb the energy of bloody monsters appeared a long time ago like a legend. Continuing to observe the process of absorbing the energy of the bloody monster, the woman with red hair is once again convinced that this is really what she thought about. The girl remembers that once in the main universe, a supernatural creature of the 7th level was born who was revered as God. According to legend, this creature, like our main character, had a crystal in his head, and he could also directly absorb the energy of the bodies of bloody monsters. In later centuries, Yuanlao Zuhe led to what was passed down from generation to generation, that the sound of Beijing disappeared. After some time, Yuanlao Hui also ordered to destroy all possible traces of the presence of this powerful creature. Many years passed, and did Jingran appear again to absorb the core. Continuing to watch how the body of our main character continues to be saturated with energy, the woman thinks about whether the legend about the difficult path will happen again. Suddenly, Mrs. Zhao realizes that this guy still cannot bear such a powerful supernatural force, because he is ready to lose control again. She continues to see how the body of our main character is filled with energy from the corpse of a bloody monster more and more every second. Next, Mrs. Zhao uses some unknown technique that allows her, with the help of hand gestures and energy, to suck the energy from the body of our main character. After the woman finishes using the spell with which she managed to interrupt the process of saturating the body of our hero, he, in turn, began to fall. However, the woman was ready for this, which is why she, without any difficulty, caught the body of our main character, which was unconscious. Next, the guys from the corporation surrounded the guy, and one of them asked Mrs. Zhao how someone could directly absorb someone else's energy. However, instead of answering, the woman asks the guys to stop talking nonsense and take her back to the spiritual base. Besides, the guy's absorption of energy does not need to be spread, because he is unstable. The next frames we watch as an armored car belonging to the Zhao family corporation drives into the spiritual base. Meanwhile, we enter the head of our main character, who at this moment is unconscious. We watch as he is beaten on his slave bone on his back. Next, we see the full picture. A crowd of hooligan bandits beat our main character and wish him to die while he protects his little sister. After these hooligans mocked Yan'an enough, they leave saying that he is the lowest and most useless alien, but he continues to hug his sister, protecting her. Sister Jia Jia wipes away the tears that are welling up in the eyes of our little protagonist and asks him if everything is okay. Suddenly, his own mother puts her hand on our main character's back. The little boy is in shock and does not realize what is happening right now. At this time, his mother explains to him in a calm tone that his slave bone is his forbidden memory, as well as his chance to rise. Next, our protagonist's mother gently removes her hand from our protagonist's slave bone, at which we hear voices from the real world seeping into our protagonist's consciousness. Moving away, the mother of our main character tells him that in order to get rid of the slave bone, he should drive the slave with the bone, and he also tells him to become a real man. Meanwhile, our main character unknowingly returns to consciousness with his arm outstretched and tears in his eyes, just like he did recently. Next, our main character sees in front of him a girl with short blue hair who asks him if he is sleeping and how his body feels. A perplexed guy asks the girl who she is and what she is doing with him. The girl responds by asking him what his problems are if he is alive and energetic. Next, the girl with short blue hair still answers the guy by saying that this is the base of an alien spirit, and her name is Lei, and she just performed a medical examination on him. The perplexed guy asks the girl about which team of demon hunters she just said. The girl replies that her aunt is Mrs. Zhao herself. She personally sent him to her. The guy asks Lei again what kind of demon hunter team she just mentioned, while the guy puts his shirt back on. The girl says that the alien spirit rift seal consists of 8 eye arrays, and the task of the demon hunter team is to regularly visit the array. The main character asks if all the tasks of the members of this team end here, whose role is only to replace energy sources. Lei answers that yes, but it is not as simple as it seems. Next, the girl gets up and, as a team deputy, invites our main character to get up and walk around to meet some friends from his team. Walking through the spiritual base, the girl says that this is the territory of a camp, and at the first alien spirit base there are a total of 9 teams, 3 of which are elite, and each has its own camp. Stopping at a barn-like building, Lei informs our protagonist that this is his team's camp. Yanan can't help but note that it looks fashionable. Going inside the camp and continuing to move along the long corridors, Lei informs the guy that now is rest time, which is why she will take him to the restroom. Before opening the door, the girl warns that discipline at the base is strict and clear, and the restroom provides absolute peace. Other than this, no actions are allowed. Entering the break room, the team's deputy, or simply Lei, is hit by a flying rose, and she looks around the perimeter of the break room, puzzled. Then we watch how absolute chaos is happening in the restroom. Everyone is doing what they want, and there is no talk of any silence. In his thoughts, the main character notices the strict discipline of these guys. Suddenly, this seemingly gentle girl named Lei takes the pose of a commander and, clutching a rose in her hands, orders everyone to stand in a row. After these 4 team members notice the presence of the vice captain, they realize that this is a dead end for them. Next, this team immediately follows Lei's command and stands in a row like in a real army, but they continue to look ridiculous. In his thoughts, our main character understands that discipline is truly present when Lei is in the room, and it extends even to small children. Next, a girl with short blue hair points her hand at our main character and introduces them to a new member of their team named Yanan. Suddenly, the deputy captain, looking around the room, realizes that the ranks are missing a member named Bai Khan. She asks the other participants about this. The little girl tells the group leader that Bai Khan is behind her and points it out with her finger. Looking back, our main character sees a simply terrifying picture as if from a horror film, but Lei understands this reaction and remains silent. Suddenly, a guy with red hair comes into the break room. He is shaking and holding his chest. He is trying to catch his breath in order to report something important. In front of us was the captain of the demon hunter team. He notified everyone about the sudden emergency number 1. He told all the people to turn on the power. Meanwhile, the course of events is moving to one of the 8 arrays. Now we will find out in more detail about the emergency situation. Inside the array were our main character Lei and the same commander who at that moment was analyzing the map on which there was information about the problems. A guy with a good haircut reports that while he was patrolling the annex, the energy source number 1 suddenly depleted, and it was because of this that grasses with bloody mouths poured inside. After discussing what happened, the 3 stood on a special platform to be transported to the scene of the incident. Meanwhile, the rest of the team also stood on the same platform, but in a different array, and began to prepare for the moving procedure. After some time, the team leader, Yanan, and Lei arrived at the destination. Everything was red, there was destruction everywhere, and a huge bloody beast immediately appeared in front of them. Approaching closer to the people, this crazy huge bloody beast let out a heart-rending scream in order to scare people. But the commander of the team did not flinch even a bit. Next, our main character, using critical thinking, noticed rather sharp leaves on a nearby tree. Without thinking for a long time, he began to use his abilities. A moment later, all the leaves that were previously on the tree were already under the control of our main character. He was ready to attack the huge monster. After a couple of seconds, our main character directs a whole flurry of sharp leaves under high pressure directly at this bloody beast. These leaves really turn out to be sharp, causing enormous damage. Our protagonist's idea was so good that he once again discussed it by saying that these leaves are so hard that they were able to penetrate the body of this hellish beast. However, our main character was completely distracted because he did not notice how the next huge, outlandish, bloody beast approached him and was already trying to bite the guy on the head. But our main character was saved by the squad leader and his very accurate hit with a magic projectile right in the monster's eye. This guy, upon seeing the remains of bloody beasts, was immediately drawn to them, but the commander asked our protagonist to concentrate and listen to his instructions. Returning to the team, Yanan asked Lei what the others were doing now. The girl with blue hair replied that Katsuko and Shirakura went to change the energy source. The squad leader added that Song Yang and Hua Hua had already settled down. He also instructed Zhao Lei to gather the bloody beasts together, and then they would fight them. After Zhao Lei heard the order from the demon hunter squad leader, she crouched down to make a high jump. Then she jumped to an incredible height from which she had the visibility she needed, as if she were flying against the backdrop of a bloody red moon. A few moments later, Zhao Lei reaches a branch and sits down on it right in front of the bloody red moon. She begins to speak in a strange language, and symbols fly through the air. Yanan asks the commander what Zhao Lei is doing. The commander replies that she uses the language of bloody beasts to gather them into one pile. The guy is surprised by what he hears. However, the commander continues to say that Zhao Lei's abilities are much more than just the language of blood beasts, at which time she continues to call out blood beasts. After the mysterious symbols reach the bloody beasts, they seem to have broken free from their chains and run headlong to the source of these symbols. After some time, Zhao Lei brilliantly copes with the task assigned to her, because now she is sitting on a branch and surrounded on all sides by bloody beasts. Next, the commander of the devil hunters looks at the tree from which the assault rifle is looking, after which he gives the order to open fire on the bloody beasts. The next moment, from the direction of this unremarkable tree, a real rain of bullets begins, which takes the life of one bloody beast after another. Our main character is surprised by the incredibly accurate shooting, but he asks if the gun is capable of killing the beast. The commander replies that usually not. But bullets that are saturated with energy? Yes. Next, we again watch Zhao Lei, who this time uses a different spell. After a moment, a purple aura appears around her and she gets to her feet. Then, continuing to read the spell, she summons spirits of blue lights that are somewhat reminiscent of Madame Zhao's technique. After the blue lights have been summoned, Lei Zhao directs them at the bloody monsters. After the lights reach the monster's head, they make him fall asleep. When the animals remain completely defenseless, the commander of this team with our main character appears on the stage. Their task is to exterminate the helpless bloody monsters. Meanwhile, we also watch as these two, also from the Demon Hunter team, are busy changing the power supply for this array. After the two install a new power source, the chubby guy wipes the sweat from his head and is glad that their work is almost complete. But a guy with long white hair points his finger at what is behind our chubby friend and asks him to turn around. After all, right now behind one of the team members, there was a bloody monster that was a couple of centimeters away from biting off a decent part of this guy's head. Meanwhile, the rest of the team continues to ruthlessly destroy crowds of bloody monsters one after another with all their might. Our main character clearly enjoyed using tree leaves to unleash a deadly barrage of incredibly durable leaves. At this time, the rest of the team members also did not lag behind and, with the help of the team, destroyed the bloody monsters in literally whole packs. After some time of destroying these monsters, the commander of this team ordered them to return to duty because the main pressure of the bloody monsters was stopped. After almost the entire team returned to duty, the team commander noticed that the two who were responsible for changing the power source were missing from the ranks. After some time, the team finds those very missing two team members who fortunately are all right. Meanwhile, while those guys were chatting, the rest were busy diagnosing the battery. They did not understand how the energy column installed only yesterday morning could end so quickly. The commander reports that it is also not entirely clear to him. He assumes that the cracks are even more unstable. He orders the others to hurry up and report today's events to the great commander. Next, the leader of the Demon Hunter team instructs a little girl with a flower on her head named Miao Hua Hua to collect the bodies of various animals, after which they will complete the job. Next, we watch how this little Miao Hua Hua is contentedly collecting various plants and the bodies of various animals. The course of events is interrupted because the team completes its work and heads back to the camp where the course of action continues. At this moment, everyone is busy charging some kind of blue reagent into their bracelet. Everyone is surprised that the energy is filled literally in an instant. Next, the team commander hands our main character this reagent and explains to him that this is an energy medicine obtained during this mission and everyone is entitled to one. The girl continues the words of the team commander by saying that you can also get energy medicine by completing tasks because the bloody animals that are located next to the cracks create strong energy. Lei Zhao continues the story about this miracle elixir by saying that it is very stable and easy to store. It can be used by a gifted person to increase the level of speed and strength. Looking at this truly amazing elixir, the guy says that this is all great. He needs to complete a few more tasks in order to save his little sister Jia Jia. Lei Zhao confirms everything said by our main character and decides to ask him a question that is completely irrelevant to the matter. She asks how many levels he has. Scratching his head, the guy replies that he was renewed once. He also adds that at that time he felt very good and his body was full of energy. After hearing what they heard, everyone was in real shock because in order to reach the third level, you must first pass the first level and the second level. Suddenly, a girl with short blue hair reports that at the base, there are devices for checking various energy levels. When the opportunity arises, she will take everyone there. Next, we watch as Johnny Cage from Mortal Kombat enters this passageway and tells Zhao Lei that the Commander-in-Chief invites her and our main character to his office. The commander of the Devil Hunter team says that he will also go with them because he needs to report to the Commander-in-Chief about today's events. Suddenly, we move to the crematorium and watch the familiar Yama Malaya, who once again suffered some kind of failure. The workers tell their master that it was Nan Gongyang who killed the high-level blood beast. She is at the level of a demigod, and they dare not do anything. The elf begins as always to insult her henchmen, calling them scum. The workers saying that the message from Tyler Durden said that she promised to pull the bones out of Yan'an. The guy is again planning something nasty and vile. He understands that he was not mistaken, because there are still bones of slaves. Despite the fact that he crushed one of them, the remaining bones will force him to beg for life. Next, this loser calls Tyler Durden and says that he has come for someone to send him medicine. Suddenly, he informs his milord that Yan'an has gone to the base of the alien spirit rift. However, this idiot doesn't care about this information at all. He tells Tyler so, telling him that he should use everything he can against him. This nasty elf continues to say that if he doesn't cope, then he can't expect to receive any energy medicine from him. After this speech, the elf sighs heavily and says goodbye to Tyler Durden from the Fight Club. Meanwhile, we move to Mrs. Zhao's office. They report that the array's energy source number 1 will be exhausted in less than 24 hours. Mrs. Zhao replies that she already knows about this problem because she also had a similar problem. Next, the surprised commander reports that 8 arrays simultaneously consume energy at high speed, which means that the Lock Spirit Array Orchid can be attacked at any time. Ms. Zhao replies that the design of the pulse-locking spirit array system combines the wisdom of Zhao's ancestors and the energy of pioneers. She continues by saying that there is only one formation left, but it can still withstand an alien beast of at least the 6th level, and the problem of rapid energy consumption is in the process of being resolved. Madame Zhao orders that her instructions be conveyed, and that in the next few days all teams will pay full attention to the formation's energy consumption. Next, the woman with red hair tells the squad leader that he can return first, and at this time she will talk to Yananye about some important things. Our main character says that he is the only one who knows that while she kills the beast at the base, she can get the energy medicine. Our main character is completely confident that he will complete several more tasks and get 2 more energy medicines in order to save his sister. Next, Ms. Zhao begins to describe methods for obtaining energy medicines. She reports that they can be obtained by killing an animal or by increasing the level in the training cabin. Ms. Zhao also adds that energy can be obtained directly by removing various sources from different rooms. After this, Mrs. Zhao calls our main character capable enough to handle this. Our main character says that he will do everything in his power. However, Madame Zhao strongly recommends that you first raise your level in the training cabin, because with his current strength, it will be difficult to save his sister. Suddenly, Mrs. Zhao notices something very unusual again. She looks closely at the forehead of our main character. Our main character at this moment also feels something is wrong. The red crystal in his forehead lights up again. Grabbing his forehead, Yan'an asks Mrs. Zhao what is that on his forehead. She in turn asks if he feels it. Mrs. Zhao explains to our main character that he has absorbed the red blood and core of an alien beast, and a red-blooded beast is a lower order that has no influx. The woman continues that the reason why red-blooded alien beasts can survive in different dimensions is because as long as their attributes are close, they can absorb others to improve themselves. The woman continues by saying that many king-level alien beasts grew out of red-blooded alien beasts, also known as swallowing beasts. Suddenly, the guy remembers that, having found himself in the crematorium, he killed someone similar in description. The woman confirms by saying that it was him. That's how our hero inherited this ability. Next, the guy asks the woman if alien animals can transform. This question arose from the guy out of nowhere. Next, Mrs. Zhao mentioned a sore subject for our protagonist, saying that he had already heard the key click, and he had already met the slave's bone in person. Stunned by what he heard, the guy asks Mrs. Zhao if a slave's bone can turn into another animal. because they use it to pay. Those with different abilities turn others into slaves. Next, the woman with red hair says that this is already a matter for the crematorium and they cannot interfere. But she wants to say that although he has already absorbed the core, he is still able to control it himself. Therefore, according to Mrs. Zhao, he just urgently needs to learn how to cleanse his core. Then the woman snapped her fingers and triggered the mechanism. Then, from under the unremarkable floor, some kind of mechanism with incomprehensible inserts crawls out. Next, the box that came out of the floor opens and we observe a beautiful sword. This shock absorber sword can lead to the purification of the energy of the blood nuclei, which can help absorb energy effectively. Lady Zhao hands our main character this sword, saying that the Jingpad sword will recognize him as soon as it absorbs special energy. It will be able to communicate with his heart and mind. Another feature of this was that he would grow and become together with our main character. After Yanan picks up this cool Sigma sword, he assures Mrs. Zhao that she shouldn't worry because it will definitely live up to her expectations. Collision and alien creatures that can destroy people at any time in another space. Someone chose Henri. Some people choose desire and greed for power. Meanwhile, the course of events is interrupted, and we watch as Feng Li finally returns to his home village of Fengjia. Everyone around immediately after meeting the girl with green eyes is happy that her older sister has finally returned. The girl greets everyone. A few moments later, the girl is surrounded by a whole crowd of children. Sitting down on her knee, the girl begins to distribute various sweets and candies to the children. Suddenly, a girl with green hair, while she is playing with the children, someone calls from behind. She turns around to find out who called her. Turning around, she sees her brother named Feng Jiangchun, who also has green hair. He waves his hand and says that he did not expect her to return so soon. Then brother Feng Li comes up to his little sister and puts his hand on her shoulder and says that he thought that she was leaving for 2 months. The girl says that this could not have happened. Next, the two begin to take a short walk around their native lands. The brother told the girl since she came and made a big noise, then her uncle would punish her. The girl is not at all surprised. Suddenly, the girl takes a cute pose and says that she did not come empty-handed, but brought a good thing with her, and she said that she could not save everyone if she did not know this. This girl's brother did not understand at all what she wanted to say, and remained perplexed. Next, the course of events moves to the hospital in this village, where a whole bunch of people gather around the operating table. A little later, we watch as the girl brings the very girl she placed in her ring, at which point she gives her an intravenous injection in the hope of saving her life. After Feng Li gives the injection and looks at the patient, she notices that after the injection, her friend begins to move a little. Everyone around sees some kind of effect. At this moment, Feng Li believes that they are all now saved because it really works. But suddenly, this girl with green hair is interrupted by her grandfather, who admits that the blood brought to her is transparent and effective, but they left the village and caused a lot of trouble. Feng Li admits her guilt and makes a deep bow towards her grandfather. As a sign of apology, she tells her grandfather that she knows that she was wrong this time. Suddenly, the guy who was standing next to his grandfather thinks that if they use this transparent, effective blood, then using it in medicine, they will all be cured. However, one of those present does not agree to study this blood for about 2 years. Instead, he suggests finding the owner of the blood in order to take even more blood. Grandfather Feng Li immediately says that this is complete nonsense because it will harm the owner of this blood and even damage his life. However, this harmful grandfather continues to stand his ground. He asks whether it is worth exchanging his life for the lives of their entire village. All the residents around begin to find meaning in the words of the second old man, saying that his words are actually not without meaning and have their place. Next, the people try to convince Grandfather Fei Li to listen to the second master of the village and approve of bringing the owner of the blood here and using more of his blood. However, this grandfather is categorically against harming someone else just to speed up the process of getting the medicine. He taps his cane and says that this matter is closed. Obviously, the granddaughter of this grandfather fully supports his words, because the owner of this blood is her friend, and he replied that if it works, he is ready to give the blood again. This harmful scumbag asks if she has any friends after she left the village. He continues asking what kind of friends she can have besides the village.